Who is the one free agent the Cowboys should sign before training camp begins? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, how you doing today, sir?
Doing well. I'm excited to get a second day of questions in. It's a rare treat. I'm excited to see where this conversation takes us. It usually takes us in a route where you're having to admit some sort of value for running backs that you don't want to admit. As has been pointed out by folks on Twitter, that somehow I have some sort of magical power to get you to talk about the value of running backs.
No, you don't.
No.
Sorry. Just go listen to yesterday's show. We talked about Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard for about 10 minutes on what the Cowboys should do in 2023. I don't think we said anything all that surprising, but I think some other people did. All right, let's jump into your Twitter questions. A couple of people wanted to know, Landon, if there's one free agent out there that's still available that you would like to see the Cowboys sign before camp begins, who is it?
You know, I for the sake of the question, I'm certainly going to answer it. But I would say that I don't know if there's anyone that needs to be signed before training camp, simply because when you look at who's out there, it's kind of that class of free agent that A, probably doesn't want to play at all in training camp, and B, I think the kind of guys that we want to bring in are, wide receivers. I'm sure we can talk about some defensive names, a couple spots, maybe a tight end. But I think that. I think for and maybe a swing tackle. I think for the most part, the kind of folks that you're talking about are folks that you're going to sign after you kind of get a look at what you have in house first, right? So if we're going to do this, if we're going to go this route, though, I would say that it probably would be wide receiver. I mean, it probably would be one of the T.Y. Hilton, Will Fuller, Julio Jones, types of, even though those are three kind of different guys, I think that, if you're talking about just adding talent to your team before training camp, some of those guys kind of are some of the people that I think just sort of stick out from the list to me.
Let me read the receivers that are available, and you just give me yes or no on some of these. Odell Beckham.
I don't see Odell Beckham. I would say yes generally, but the problem is that we don't even know when he's going to be available. Like
it doesn't seem like it lines up with what they need because of Gallup being out, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's redundant by the time that Gallup get back. I mean, I don't know that they're the same player, but still, it's like the issue is more immediate. So it's hard to sign a guy who's already injured.
Julio Jones.
I mean, it makes sense. I think you would like to have that kind of caliber to draw away some attention for the rest of your offense. I think I would point to the idea that I don't know that Julio Jones wants to come in and do a bunch of training camp right now, but maybe he does, and maybe the Cowboys are interested. I would be interested. I think the price has to be right because he is still 33 years old, and I know that you want to hold on to some of that money to roll over into next year to sign some of your guys.
Couple more, just really quickly. Antonio Brown, no. Emmanuel Sanders. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Cole Beasley?
No, probably not.
Yeah. Will Fuller. That's the one for me. There's a couple other receivers out there, but that's kind of the list, like Willie Snead, Deshaun Jackson.
I think Jackson will never sign with the Cowboys. I mean, his mother literally told me that on Twitter one time. I think the reason that someone like T.Y. Hilton and Will Fuller and to some degree even Emmanuel Sanders seems to be more appealing for us is that it's not just adding another veteran body. They add a dimension that you may not have as much of in speed. So I think that there's some value to that. Some value to adding, that kind of element to it. And then with Julio Jones, I mean, he's still Julio Jones. He's 33 years old. He's not quite the player that he was, but I think that there's just an immense amount of talent. But I think with T.Y. Hilton, Sanders, Fuller, there makes schematic sense in signing those guys because, again, they add an element to your offense, your wide receiver room that you don't necessarily have.
I would say, like with even Fuller and Sanders, like those guys have very different roles, and you're signing them for different purposes. Like if you're
Yeah.
signing Emmanuel Sanders, I think it's because you want to have a competent wide receiver through three, or maybe even a wide receiver two early in the season that can run routes and get open. If you're signing Will Fuller, it's because you think he can be a part-time player that has a very specific role. Those are two very different things, at least in my opinion. Fuller fills one spot where Sanders is more of a longer-term option if Jalen Tolbert struggles, or none of the other receivers step up, or if Michael Gallup's going to be out more than 3 or 4 games. That's when I think you go get somebody like Sanders. But I would like to see the Cowboys sign Will Fuller because he's still pretty young. He's only 28 years old. He just turned 28 in April. He's still a really effective down the field receiver. And it's not like he missed a lot of time last year because of like a torn ACL or an Achilles injury. He had a finger injury that cost him a lot of the season. I think he's fine to go this year. I would sign him now and get a connection going with him and Dak before we get to the regular season.
Yeah, I guess I tend to agree with you on the Sanders Fuller line of delineation there. I would just add that I think generally my thought process is that they're gonna have one role pre Gallup returning and then another role post Gallup returning.
Correct.
Right.
And that's
And,
probably the point I was trying to make. Yes.
and that's where I think the separation between the two is, right? Is that,
Mhm.
once you've got Gallup, I think you use Fuller some, but I think he is kind of a not a gadget player, but a guy that you're, kind of putting in there specifically
He's a
to leverage his
complimentary
speed.
player, right?
Yeah, a complimentary player. And I think for Sanders, you know, I think that Sanders would be your James Washington just replacement. Like just cut James Washington, if he
Yeah.
plays
Yep.
well and the second half of the season comes in and you just don't need as many bodies. So yeah, I do think there is some differences there. There's some differences in all these guys, but I do think that the thing to really look at is what is their role going to be before Gallup gets back, and what's their role going to be afterwards.
Just really quickly on some of these other free agents, there's a bunch of offensive tackles out there now. That's one I certainly don't see the Cowboys making a move on before training camp.
No.
There's really just no interest in going out and getting a Jason Peters or an Eric Fisher or a Dwayne Brown now, right? Like you only sign those guys if you need them to start week 1, right?
And also, I mean, look, I mean, can you give me the list? Like, keep going down
Sure.
that list. Who else is there? Who else is
Yeah,
there?
Darrell Williams, Eric Fisher, Dwayne Brown, Riley Reef, Bobby Massey, Jason Peters, Brandon Shell, Tyrell Crosby. Those are all
Th-
guys that
those are all
I
guys that can play some snaps for you. Those are all guys that if you
yes.
needed to get through a game with one of those guys playing tackle for you, you could do it and be okay. The point being that you just listed, I don't know, 6 or 7 guys. They're all still available. That's not really probably changing too much. I mean,
No.
some of them will go, but a lot of those guys will be available probably all the way up until the regular season. So none of those guys necessarily need to come in and take training camp reps, especially when you have 3 young tackles that you want to get reps, and then another guy that can play tackle that you want to get reps. So I think that that's likely the route they'll go. If it gets to the point where they realize they don't have what they need, then you go out and you look at a Darrell Williams. Then you go out and look
Mhm.
at some of Crosby or some of these other guys, Peters, if he still has anything left, and see what you can get out of them, because that's your fallback plan. And you'd rather have a young guy that you feel like is on the cusp, and that
Yep.
a couple more snaps would kind of really accelerate their growth. And I think again also too clearly they're trying to do a left side right side thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're looking to go out and try to find a single solution for backup offensive tackle anymore.
Correct.
I think it's more about having guard tackles who play on the left and right side.
Couple free agents again, just quick yes or no. What about Anthony Barr?
Yes, I mean
I
just
agree.
simply because he adds an element that's different, right?
Dante Hightower.
That would depend on the price, I think, very
Yeah.
much. But I have interest if that works out. Yes.
Yeah. Eddie Goldman.
Yes, maybe. Again, all this is price based because I'm not
Yeah.
paying a
Yeah.
bunch of money for any of these guys. So I gotta say, keep my powder dry for next year for sure.
Okay. The Ndamukong Suh is the only other one that people wanted to know about.
That's too pricey, man, and I just don't know. It's just volatile.
I thought
I
he
don't know.
looked, I don't want to say washed, but it was pretty clear he's a declining player at this point, right?
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
think I'm good.
I think I'm good. I don't know. It's hard to get a real read on what that guy's like in the locker room too.
And I'm not
So
quite sure he's the best fit in a Dan Quinn defense that wants to be multiple and play some 5 techniques and some nose tackles.
you
I
want to
th
move those guys around, and he may not want to do that. So
he
you
might
need
not wanna do
guys
it.
who are willing to kind of be flexible and do whatever. So
I agree.
that may not be Ndamukong.
All right, let's tell you guys about Built Bar and their brand new product they have out right now. You guys have probably tried my favorite, the coconut brownie chunk Built Bar before, but they've got a new one. It's coconut brownie chunk, the Puffs treatment. It's absolutely fantastic. All Built Bars are made with collagen protein, which helps your body absorb more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. So on only 150 calories, 19 grams of protein. Absolutely fantastic. Delicious coconut, rich, sweet brownie, and creamy marshmallow. Stop fantasizing and get to built.com right now to order your box of coconut brownie chunk built puffs. Again, go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCK15 to get your box of coconut brownie chunk built puffs. All right, Lena, let's get to some more of these questions. A lot of people want to know, and this is a really good question from, I lost it. It's at Fully Tag. What's the narrative around Dak and his future with the Cowboys if the Cowboys miss the playoffs this year? Let's say he stays healthy, 16, 17 games, and they go 8-9 and they miss the playoffs. Are we starting to have concerns now about, is Dak the right guy for the future of this team, or is that a conversation for way down the road?
I think it really depends on how that all unfolds. Obviously, I'd have to say that if Dak stays healthy for 16 games and they only win 8 or 9 games, that he didn't play very well.
Yeah.
So I would say that in this hypothetical situation where Dak isn't playing very well, then yeah, I think it's
Yep.
reasonable to question his future. But I also think that I haven't seen anything that's approaching that yet, to the point where I'm like ready or wanting to get rid of Dak. I think that, I feel like I've heard a lot of kind of unnecessary Dak slander this offseason from Cowboys folks when, it just seems like taking shots for,
I think
I don't
Cowboy
know.
fans are getting impatient, right?
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think when you have a healthy Dak, he's been pretty outstanding. So, I guess I can understand some concern about, well, will he kind of have a problem getting, staying healthy? But I actually don't even have too much concern there, I guess. I don't know. I don't view him as injury prone. I view him as having like a series of injuries that kind of all played
Yeah.
into each other. But I think, a year away from that will help. So I would assume that would be the conversation, and I'm going to assume that if the Cowboys go 8-9 and Dak plays all 16 games, that something terrible didn't go right. But it's hard to kind of hypothesize because we just haven't seen a
Yeah.
Dak like that so bad that it would be an 8 or 9 win, sort of season.
So, really quickly, in the last 2 full seasons that Dak has played, 2019, 33 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Cowboys had the number 1 ranked offense in the NFL. 2021, 38 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. The Cowboys had the number 1 ranked offense in the NFL. You're not getting rid of a quarterback that consistently makes you the number 1 offense in the NFL when he's healthy. You're not doing that. Now, would there be some questions about, hey, is he a top 10 quarterback? Is he closer to the Kirk Cousins range of quarterbacks where he can put up big stats in the regular season, but maybe not the guy to get you over the hump? I think those kind of conversations would start to pop up more if the Cowboys just miss the playoffs entirely. But any talk about the Cowboys moving on or thinking about trading him or anything like that just seems silly, right? You don't even have that conversation unless Dak puts together multiple subpar seasons. And we just haven't seen one yet from him since the start of 2017. That's the last time, or the end of 2017. That's the last time we've seen a subpar Dak Prescott.
These are Cowboys fans who became Cowboys fans after, I would say, 2004, 2005, who don't remember, what it was like. Why? I mean, you don't get rid of a top 10 quarterback. Like, I mean, I think you can argue
No.
what you want, but I think Dak is firmly in the top 10 of quarterbacks. And I think that people are just. I understand people's impatience. I understand people are upset, but I think people also need to realize that they make bad decisions. People make bad decisions when they're upset, and people
Yeah.
make bad hot takes when they're upset. And
Yeah.
and I think that look, Dak Prescott has been incredible when he's been healthy. I'm not just throwing that away for
No.
unknown in the future, especially since, like I said, I was around for the year 2000. I was around for the year 1999. I was around for 2001 and
Yeah,
2002.
I mean, if something were to happen with the Cowboys don't make the playoffs or they have a losing season, unless Dak is so bad that he looks just completely different, you make changes elsewhere, right? You
Yeah,
change the head coach, or you change the offensive coordinator, or you change the coaching staff, or you change the entire offense altogether. But again, you would need to see multiple seasons of Dak's like pass rating being in the low 90s or high 80s before you even consider moving on. But
I'd have to see Dak play in a way that I have not seen him play
correct.
professionally. He has
Yeah.
not played poorly enough at any point in his career to be removed from his job, as far as I'm concerned.
The only say is the end of the 2017 season is the only time where it was a little shaky, but that's the only time. Well, that was a long time ago. That was Dak's second year. So I, it just doesn't seem very likely that we get there. But different question. Who was your favorite quarterback from like the 2000s, early 2000s? Were you a Chad Hutchinson guy? Were
I'm
you
a Clint
Anthony
Sterner
Wright?
guy. I mean,
Clint Sterner, yeah. I
uh,
listen. I like Clint Sterner for a little bit. I own some Clint Sterner stock.
he was an Arkansas guy, right?
I believe
I,
so.
I think if I remember correctly, I was a big Clint Sterner fan because my high school quarterback, the guy that played quarterback for us in high school, was his backup at Arkansas, and so I just had an affinity of watching him in college, and knowing that he was behind, or he started above the guy that started us, played for us in high school. So maybe him, but I mean, honestly, all of them are so bad that like none of them are fun. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah. Well,
it's
I will say that it was 2001. He came in, and I remember this very specific or vividly. He came in against the Eagles in 2001, week 3, threw 2 touchdowns late in the game. That was a blowout. And I was kind of excited. So a couple weeks later, he started against the Cardinals, and they won that game. He didn't play particularly well, but they won, and Clint Sterner was the quarterback. So I was all excited. Next week, they play the Giants. He goes 13 of 23 for 177 yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 interceptions.
yeah, that
And
sounds
never
right.
played again.
That sounds right. Yeah, that's the Clint Sterner I remember. Honestly, all those names like are a flash. I mean, the Chad Hutchinsons, the Clint Sterners,
The Drew Henson?
the Drew. I was gonna say who was the Yankees kid, the Drew Henson. I mean, and really, the it was so bad that Quincy Carter was like a huge breath of
You had
fresh
no
air. Was like
excited how
the future of the
how excited I
franchise.
was. Yeah. Quincy's 2003 season, so good. So good.
Yeah,
He had
it
17
was.
touchdowns and 21 interceptions, by the way, but he
That
was
was that was amazing to us at the time. So every time you guys think about whether or not we should get rid of Dak, you just remember how happy we were to have Quincy Carter when we had Quincy Carter. So that's what being a quarterback hell is. Look what's happening. We've got the US Open making fun of the Seattle Seahawks right now, guys. Do you want to be part of that? Do you want to
no,
get dunked on by
no.
the US Open Twitter account? No. Give me Dak. We'll keep Dak.
Do you remember Quincy's great throw that he had in the end zone against Carolina to Antonio Bryant to win that game? I do.
I mean, I remember Carter to Bryant. I definitely, those guys were
How about the
again.
Giants game on Monday Night Football? The Billy Cundiff game.
Yes,
That's
yes,
a sweet one
yes.
too.
Oh God. Oh,
Those are like the peak Cowboy seasons for me as like an 11-year-old. I was so excited when the Cowboys got Quincy Carter. It was so much fun.
I mean, listen, real quick. If you guys want to know the difference between Marcus and I's Cowboys fandom, when Marcus was 11 years old, he was dealing with the Quincy Carter era, Dallas Cowboys. When I was 11 years old, I was dealing with Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith. So
Yeah.
that just shows you the difference in the generations between Cowboys fans, if anything else does.
Yeah, that's why I'm very
That's why
appreciative
you're
of Dak
pessimistic and
Prescott.
I'm
Yes.
optimistic. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
We could
All right,
we could all agree though that we want to keep Dak. Both of those perspectives have taught us that we want to keep Dak.
Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yeah. Because if you have a competent quarterback, you need to get a significant, surefire thing to move on from him because
Yeah,
having
exactly.
even a top 15 quarterback is insanely valuable in today's NFL. All right, let's get
Absolutely.
to some more questions. This one from Zach. Do you think the Cowboys can have a top 5 defense this year?
Yeah, I think it's certainly possible. I mean, look, regression's a real thing, and it's extremely difficult to kind of keep a high level of defense going, especially the
Mhm.
turnover rate. The turnover rate they had last year is not sustainable, and don't think that it will be. But that doesn't mean that you can't improve in other areas. I mean, that's the thing that is kind of counteracting a lot of the regression. I'm hoping is that you have an incredibly young defense that will also be improving as from their first years. I mean, you had what was it, 11 guys on defense that you drafted
Mhm.
that are all going into a second year, and on top of that, some of the superstars on your defense are still really young and still really growing as players. So
Mhm.
I think it's certainly within the realm of possibility, especially when you look at the strength of schedule that the Cowboys are playing, which I think plays a huge factor there. It's not a strong schedule. The Cowboys have talent there. Have a returning defensive coordinator for the first time in 5 years,
Yeah,
4 years.
forever.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So I think that all that can add up to certainly a possibility that they're a top five defense. I'm not expecting it necessarily, but I think it's certainly within the realm of of outcomes that the Cowboys could do that. And I think they're certainly counting on the Cowboys defense on being very, very good this year.
Yeah, and they can get better, like, in certain little parts of the game, like their run
Yeah.
defense. Like, they were
Yeah.
allowing 4.5 yards per carry last year. If they can just tighten that up a little bit and get it to 4.3 or even 4.4, I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but little tiny edges, like in those kind of spots, if they can cut down on the number of first downs they allowed because of penalties, which was, I mean, ridiculous last year. The Raiders game was an example of that. I think they had like 9 defensive penalties that led to first downs. You just clean up some of those and become more middle of the pack, and you have a high turnover rate. You're not going to lead the league in turnovers. It's just not going to happen.
Hmm.
But if you can stay relatively high up there, sure, why not? This defense is very talented with one of the best defensive coordinators in the league, and they've got the potential to have at least one superstar, if not 3, on defense, right? Trevon Diggs continues to play well. DeMarcus Lawrence stays healthy, and you got Michael Parsons. Those 3 guys alone can lead you to a top 5 defense in the league.
Yeah, and then you add in guys that you expect to take a step like Gallimore and Odigizua, and you've got guys that are talented that are going to be coming in this year that you didn't have last year, like Cox and Leighton Vander Esch with another year to kind of maybe at least play a little bit better football, and I think again. A year of continuity for someone like Anthony Brown and Jordan Lewis, who showed you something last year when they were able to play in that
Mhm.
system. So and like we mentioned, all those other younger guys, Hooker playing a more pronounced role. All these, have the opportunity to kind of counteract some of the obvious regression that's going to happen, just numbers wise, with the turnover ratio. So, I have confidence that the Cowboys defense is going to be good. I think regression is what you're concerned about, but I think no matter what, they should be a pretty solid to very good defense.
Uh, don't disagree at all. All right, last one. This is a kind of a fun, silly one from Goran. He
Uh-oh.
wants to know: we are officially in best shape season.
Oh
As
yeah,
such, who
yeah.
was the first player you remember who helped shape your best shape of his life cynicism? For me, it was Bill Parcells amping up Brock Petiti in his second season, which I remember that very well. Pitt offensive tackle. Any other ones that you could think of?
I don't know why, but my brain goes back to T.O.
Yeah, that's a good
Like
one.
because like they constantly talking. Oh, he's just in great shape. He's just, well, that's what T.O. does. Like that's a T.O. T.O.'s like the guy who does sit ups on
Yeah.
the driveway. So I remember that era kind of being the beginning of that, right? Like where they started hyping up kind of best shape of their life sort of situations that it's like that era of like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, kind of section. That's when guys were working out full time, like
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
season long. I mean, I think you started that 90s Cowboys team. I mean, they were like that a little bit, but that was kind of the end of the era of needing to get guys into shape to play the season,
Mhm.
right? Like this is something now professional football players just stay in shape so they don't have to get in shape now.
I mean, because it's me, I think of the opposite. I think of the guys that are in the worst shape of their life seasons.
Tony Romo.
I mean, we bullied some of these guys on Twitter. Tony Romo's a great one. Remember, there was the picture.
Don't include me in this.
Okay,
This
I
is you.
bully people on Twitter. John Machota, the one picture of Romo
Oh, yeah.
jogging where his jersey was, kind of had some air in it and made him look a little chubby, right?
Machota deserves some of the blame, but he doesn't get any of it because you're the one who actually said the words. I think we all knew that John took that picture for that reason, but I think that you're the one who kind of put the button on the fact that Romo looked a little round.
Yeah, DeMarcus Lawrence, the year after his back surgery, right? You remember that one? That was a very famous one.
I remember you talking about it. I don't remember how big or not big DeMarcus Lawrence was.
Ezekiel Elliott, 2017, after all the stuff that was going on off the field. That's one that I remember very vividly. And then a non-Cowboys one, I remember Kelvin Benjamin running out of the field during training camps, and that one might have got him cut, potentially. So we see it every once in a while. We'll have it this year. There'll be somebody. There always is. There'll be somebody who comes in a little heavy, a little fluffy around the midsection that I cannot wait to talk about on Twitter.
It's going to be me. I mean, let me just go ahead and clear it up. I'm going into training camp a little fluffy in the middle. So
you honestly don't see that very much anymore, right? It's very rare to have somebody come into training camp out of shape because a couple of things. They don't want to be bullied online. Honestly, like that's a big thing is they don't want to see their picture on Twitter and be trending all day because people think
Marcus
they're fat.
Is vicious, guys. He's vicious.
Number two,
you don't want to see Marcus in these Twitter streets.
The second is a lot of these guys have workout bonuses or their contracts are tied to their playing weight or how many weight room visits they have. So it's just not all that common to see it, but it's still kind of funny when it does.
Yeah. It is, and especially when often sometimes it half of the things you just mentioned were just bad picture angles, or the wind hitting his jersey in such a way, or having a rib guard that was unbuckled or something like that. So it always
angles
with exactly with every best shape of their life season. There's also the best shape of their life season.
I will say the guy that this year that I've already seen who looks like in fantastic shape is DeMarcus Lawrence. He looks
Lawrence
thin and lean. He looks good.
He does. He looks like he's in really, really good shape. Again, we talked about like a year without having to do surgery of any kind really can help, doesn't it?
Well, and plus, I mean, as these defensive ends age, the better strategy, rather than bulking up to kind of last through the season, is to get slimmer and stay quick. And I think that's the right way for DeMarcus Lawrence to go. And I fully expect him to have a really good season. I still think he's only like 30. He was fantastic last year when he was on the field, even coming back from the broken foot.
Yeah,
I expect him to be phenomenal this season. All right, that is it for today's show. Thank you guys for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen today. Now make your second listen to Locked On NFL podcast, where our national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league, because an offseason doesn't equal a break in the action. Check out the Locked On NFL podcast wherever you get your podcasts, all the same places that you download the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Check us out on YouTube. We post shows there every single day. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Cowboys. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB, and I'm at Marcus _Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.